We are live. Hello, everybody. Give
Hi guys.
maybe a few seconds. Let all of the platforms notify everybody that we're live. Sometimes that lags a little bit, but I think this case is going to be interesting. And like, I still have something on pause that I've been watching all morning on it. And finding out some history that was never mentioned in just that movie, about it, which I think is going to lend
Yeah.
to some other information and ways of thinking about it. Hey, Sandy. Hello, hello. I think we need to make a trip to go to Rhode Island. Like, I think I have a new obsession. Like, I want to go to this house.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And this was before, like, when the whole movie came out. I'm like, whatever, overrated. But all of this other history that I've been looking up, and I'm like, okay, I think this is going to be interesting.
So I do have something to say about the movie when we get to that point, but I'm going to let somebody else give more of a breakdown of the haunting itself, and then we can really talk about it.
Okay, so we are talking about the house that the Conjuring movie, and I'm sure we all saw. What was there, two or three movies put out about this
Yeah.
property?
No, it wasn't about the house. They were Ed and
The
Lorraine
family.
Warren cases.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're based on Ed and Lorraine Warren's career, but the first movie was centered on that.
So some of the history, and Larry, you might know some of the history too. So correct me if I'm wrong or jump in. The house was first started to be built in 1680. And that land was active or a part of the King's War that happened. So I'm like, oh, there could be residual replay, that's going on that nobody really wants to acknowledge in a lot of these other, documentaries because they want to focus on just the evil stuff. And the house as it stands now was completed in like 1736. So old land, old property. That property was a part of the King's War. So that just opens up a lot of, replay, residual, traumatic experiences. I'm sure there's been a couple portals blown open around in there.
I
Um,
guarantee it.
so I think it's really cool as somebody who likes old buildings that is the original structure still standing that they maintain. Now, when they talk about flickering lights, I'm like, is your electric up to code? How old are them wires?
Right.
How old is our light switches? Where's your handyman? Things are
Yeah.
opening and closing. When was the last time you got a level out? And check how your doors are hanging, how your cupboards are hanging, how that latch is hitting that door. And it's all wood. Wood shrinks and expands in humidity and temperature. So I don't immediately go, oh, doors are opening. I'm like, let's get a home inspector out, shall we? But some
Boy,
of the
you're
other
skeptical.
right. And it is sold a few times. One of the owners after the family that the movie was based on, she's like, other than some lights and footsteps, nothing's going on. It's sold again, and now the company that owns it, they do allow people to come in and stay and do investigations. They have recordings, but again, they're like, there's nothing demonic going on here.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, how funny that an Ed and Lorraine Warren case has demons,
Yeah,
has a movie made
exactly.
off of it. How
Yup.
interesting.
Yeah.
But I can mention at the end some of the on YouTube, so free to watch. Just watching spirit communication sessions and testing these people, like these people who are doing it. They're like, all right, we're going to randomly drive to a park and we want you to do it again. They go and buy them soft slippers to make sure they're not knocking on the floor. Make them change their shoes and slippers and socks on camera. I mean, like, now do it again. So, which I thought was very interesting. So, Larry, did you have any other like history or information about the house?
Well, the only thing that I saw that I heard was that they heard a voice that would say there's 7 dead soldiers in the walls,
Yeah, I
and
heard that.
that immediately brought me back to the wartime. And I was thinking about the soldiers and the ground and the people that are attached to the property, not so much the house. The house itself has the history shows two suicides by hanging, one by poisoning, a murder of a child, but then that was kind of debunked because supposedly the girl wasn't murdered there; she was murdered somewhere else by someone else. So that one's kind of out there, and then two people were supposedly frozen to death at different times in different
Yeah.
instances on that land. Um, so there's a lot of trauma there.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
I don't, I don't buy into the whole movie premise. I I'm leaning more towards the family, the parents that bought it. Um, they were attached, and somehow they created this portal, this awakening of some spirits in the area, and that created this haunting for them. And when they left, they were able to detach from that because that spirit energy is attached to that land. So I think it's the parents that actually opened up the portal, not so much the house or the land itself. That's just my initial thought.
So I do know, because I bought Andrea's books, where it's the memoirs of their time there. Her and her family all contributed to it. I know for a fact from Andrea herself that they moved there after a bunch of traumatic stuff happened. Um, the neighborhood kids where they were living were just absolutely terrible. Um, Andrea had witnessed her dog be run over by a car, that's an interesting story that I'm going to get to. And then they had gone on vacation, and when they came back, they had four cats. Two of them had been beaten. One of them was beaten to death. Every bone in the cat's body was broken. And then they had two Siamese cats who were stolen and sold to somebody else in the town. And Andrea, and you wouldn't know it if you have met her, one of the sweetest people you can ever meet in your life. Would never think that she could get where she was in that time. Um, so her father had filed a police report, obviously, because he went in the house and was ransacked. Everything was destroyed. All their food was out all over the house, and the refrigerator and everything was wide open. Everything was spoiled. Obviously, two stolen cats, one dead cat, one cat on the brink of death, but survived. And the kids that did it didn't get in any trouble. So Andrea had decided that she wasn't going to stand for it, and she stalked the kid who initiated all of this, and she had fully intended to beat him to death like he did her cats, and would have, but she was pulled off of him by a passerby, and they told her to go home. And after that is when her mom really decided, okay, we got to get our family out of here. And her mom actually went to see the house, when her dad was on a business trip. Her mom made the decision to go see the house, and without hesitation, without asking his permission, she put the down payment on the house. And then they discussed it and they moved in. Now, I was listening to some things where it said they lived there for 3 months before things started happening and all this, which isn't true. Andrea said that stuff started happening the day they moved in. It may not have gotten bad for a few months, but stuff started happening right away. As for the baby that was killed, that part of the story is interesting to me. because the woman who was accused of murdering the child, her name is Bathsheba. You know, like in the movie, she's the main antagonist. I guess I didn't watch it because I don't watch horror movies, but that's what I understand. Well, the dog that died before they ever moved into that house or knew anything about it, they named it Bathsheba. And that was long before they even knew the house existed.
What a random name to pick.
And then, right, right. And then, you know, they didn't know about Bathsheba until after the mom had started doing research on the house because stuff was happening. Now, Andrea said in an interview that the movie is 95% BS because she said in reality, they had to tone down the story so that it was watchable. She said that she had um, spoken with whatever his name, James Wong or whatever his name is, and that he heard the real story, and he's like, "Yeah, I can't put that on screen because I don't want people to have to walk out of the theater because they're too scared to watch the rest of the movie." So he had to tone it down. She was like, while it was beautifully made, it was an excellent horror movie, it was 95% BS. And she said that her and her family, as much as people say that they were terrified, and yes, they were for some of the stuff, she saw it more as a love story than a horror. And I'm like, okay, from everything I've heard, it's a horror. I don't see how you get love story out of what happened to you guys, but you went through it. I didn't. So how you felt about it is more valid than how I feel. So, um, shush. And let's see, there was something else I wanted to say before I stop because I know I've been babbling for a little bit. Um, um, uh, Goodness me. She also said that she doesn't believe there were any demons in the house at all. Malevolent spirits, yes. Demons, no. And that Bathsheba, unlike, you know, Lorraine said that Bathsheba was the main antagonist in the real story as well as the movie. And Andrea's like, I don't believe that one bit. There was something else. There was someone else who was the main um, force in the house. Luna,
Yeah,
hush.
Yeah. First
if
of
I
all, oh,
could,
sorry.
oh, just
Me.
just a bit of historical data. Bathsheba Sherman actually lived in that house on the property, not in that house.
Not
That's
in the
the important
house.
thing. She lived in a different house on the property. Um, she moved in 1812 and she died in 1885.
Mm-hmm.
And she was she was believed to have been uh, a witch, but in on the dark side of the
Yeah,
occult, and that a lot of people in the town felt that she was bringing in this demonic energy herself.
yeah,
And I often wonder when I was listening to all this, I was wondering if before the parents moved to the house, if Mrs. Perrin or one of the kids wasn't dabbling in that a little bit and
mm,
brought that energy with them to the property that caused Bathsheba to awake and start this. Because there is, and I hate to say use the word documented because it's just hearsay, but there's a lot of information about the way Bathsheba treated Mrs. Perrin versus the way she treated Mr. Perrin.
oh yeah,
Completely diabolically different. It's almost like she was in love with Mr. Perrin and she hated Mrs. Perrin. She would
yeah,
she would coddle and touch Mr. Perrin in a very seductive way and she would stab and haunt Mrs. Parent. So my thought is there was something that they brought with them to this property that awoke this. But why this property? Why that house when that's not where Bathsheba was? And that's where Hollywood gets involved. And they take what we do and they turn it into this fairy tale and remove the fact and turn it into something that's watchable and so I guess that's where my disconnect is how much is
Yeah.
true.
Bathsheba was a person, just like you said. So I think she was not pretty well known in the community from what I understand. So the documentary that I watched was called The Harrisville Haunting, and it was actually kind of cool because Eric Connor, one of the investigators, I had met at a convention that I worked way back when, and didn't even realize he was on it. Then I was like, oh, I know, that's cool. But so basically they went and investigated the Conjuring House, but then in the first half of it they just go through history and stuff. I watched it on Tubi. I don't know where else it's at, but anyway, they actually found the obituary for Bathsheba, and there was nothing negative on it at all. And back then they were saying how they kind of put you on blast in your obituary.
Yeah.
If she had killed a baby, they would have put that in. Hi, Greg. They would have put that in her obituary, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't think necessarily if she would have done that or not. She wasn't a real person. The part that I have a hard time with is it's always a witch, or
Always.
and it's the witchcraft aspect of it. And of course, maybe I'm a little sensitive to it. I don't know, but I don't think that just because a woman has evil intentions, they automatically put that with witch, and if she did kill the baby, they said that she used a needle and somehow made it look like an accident. I don't know how you could do that, but anyway, use the needle, somehow made it look like an accident. And it's if she was a witch, like they said, and witchcraft worked in the way that they portray it, would she really use a needle, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, and let's remember the time frame. There were a lot of small children that died back then.
Oh, absolutely.
Medicine is not what it is today.
No.
So, she and her husband, because I'm reading in another tab, successful produce business. So, of course, there's going to be some jealousy, some anger. So, what is the best way back then to make a woman look bad? Call her a witch.
Call her a witch.
And have her young son die. She must have done it. Now, there's some reports where the husband caught her doing it. Really? How? When? Prove to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, her tombstone is there. There is no record of the suicide.
Yeah, I think she was buried in a Baptist cemetery too, and they're they wouldn't have buried her
right
there.
Yeah.
And this is the first one where I saw where they really went into the background of it, and I appreciated that because
and these reports, and you two have met Andrew, you'll know, but they'll say that she believes it was actually not Bathsheba, but somebody else, another woman on an adjoining property who did hang herself, that was really the tormentor. So why they focused on this poor,
because
woman,
Lorraine said it was her.
And I'm like, come on. Well, and we know spirits lie, right? They can lie all day long. There is no truth detector for the spirit world. Larry, you have one job. Go invent a lie detector.
Well, Lorraine also suggested, this was crazy to me, that she suggested the seance.
Yes, and that's that whole situation irritates my soul.
Why would you suggest that the person that is being focused on by whatever entity is there, you're going to suggest they do the seance? And I mean, come on. Come on.
The seance almost killed Mrs. Perrin.
Yeah. I mean, her heart stopped from what they said, right?
Yeah, and people are people get so upset because her husband punched Ed Warren in his face. Well, I would have punched him in his face too. I can't hit your wife, so I got to hit somebody.
No, seriously, like they trusted you. Like you're
Right.
the so-called
But
expert.
I will say, as much as I always, am pretty, I don't want to say down, but we'll use that word since I can't think of a better word, on Ed and Lorraine. Andrea said not one single time during their time together did she ever feel that they wanted anything less than to help the family. They wanted to help, and I'm like, that's great, and I believe they always wanted to help, but you're not helping by not getting things right. You're not
Right.
helping by saying everything is demonic. You're not helping by scaring the hell out of these people. And I'm sorry, I will say this, and I will say this till the day I die. I've heard a few cases where they have actually suggested that people leave their homes, and I'm like, there is never a situation where somebody should have to leave their home. If you can't figure it out or figure out how to help them, that is perfectly fine. There is no shame in that.
Say
But
that.
you know somebody who can help them. If I get into a situation where I'm over my head, I know several other people who are wiser in this field than I am, and I will not hesitate to call somebody for help.
I honestly rewound the documentary that I was watching on it when they were like, "Oh, they did a seance." I'm like, "No, they didn't."
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
anything between the two, it should have been like exorcism, right? And I'm like, woo, 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 play. And in the seance, I'm like, no, I heard that right.
Yeah.
But I was like, really? That's what we're gonna do? Okay. Of course, things are gonna go flying now. I'm like, this all the wrong things done here.
Yes.
Now, Larry, being a psychic medium, would you have suggested doing a seance with a possessed household? And I say that because I'm like, everything's possession with Ed and Lorraine, and we weren't
Sure.
there.
Yeah.
With what I know, I would say no, because I'm very careful as to, the word conjuring. To me, there's summoning, and there's conjuring. Now, to me, when we're trying to speak with a spirit, we're summoning them. We're asking them to be present to give us information.
Mm-hmm.
If you're conjuring a spirit or a demonic entity, that's more of a demand where we're going into their layer, and we're demanding that they come with us to our layer and kind of participate in whatever this ritual is that we want to. So I would, based on what I know, I don't think that would have been the best option. I think an exorcism, if they believed that she was possessed, that an exorcism would have been the way to do it, not the seance.
I mean, even if she's not possessed, right? It's like, at what point? I don't know. In my opinion, when a spirit, demonic or not, or whatever, is super malevolent like that, and you're trying to eradicate them from the house or solve the situation. So not just like research and go to a really, famously haunted place. Like you're going there to fix the issue. Why would you look? What is communication going to do at that point? You know what I mean? Like, why would she not just do a cleansing? And in the documentary I watched, they even said they're like, oh yeah, and I forget the mom's name now. Carolyn? No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Carolyn she's like, oh yeah, she's the conduit. Why? Like, I don't know. That's just crazy to me. Like, because she lost all this weight. She was the one that was being targeted specifically. And in the Devil Made Me Do It case, for Lorraine to say, he was so silly for challenging the demon and for blah, blah, blah. But then in another case to be like, we're going to actually perform a seance with this demon. And just like Larry said, would it really even be a seance if it's a demonic entity, or did you just want to see what would happen at that point? Like that's my call.
They did say, Andrea, I believe, did say that they had suggested the seance to figure out exactly what they were dealing with. Yeah, that's this Melissa, the face you just made is the same face I made, and I can't hear anything.
Yeah.
I think you're muted, but it's really
I think you're muted, Emma.
funny.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Melissa.
I forgot I was
Oh.
typing, looking up, but I'm
It
like,
was hilarious seeing you responding.
Yeah.
well, because of the
Absolutely
frustration, you wanted to figure out what you're dealing with. I'm sorry, you're psychic. Tell me without
Exactly.
the seance.
Yeah, a demon, you said, apparently, right? Like,
Yeah.
Do your thing, Lorraine. Why do you need parlor tricks?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me.
Crazy.
Like when I heard they were doing the seance to figure out what they were dealing with, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like even me as me sitting here right now, if I was in the room, part of the family or not, I would have started throwing hands with people because like, are y'all really that stupid?
Yeah, and the problem is when you start playing these games, you're actually giving them more power. So
Yep.
if you've got something that you feel is dangerous and needs to be addressed, you need to address it. You don't need to give it more power.
Exactly. So
See, that sounds like a frat boy thing. Let's go see what we can do. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hold my beer, right?
Yeah, I
yeah.
was just thinking that.
I mean, seriously. Um,
And then of course they tried to Ed and Lorraine tried to write a book about it, and Carolyn shut it down. They did ask her permission. Okay, they did go to her and say, "Hey, we want to write a book. You know, is it okay?" And she said, "Absolutely not." So, because she didn't want anything to do with the Warrens after that, and apparently, she had kept a journal throughout the entire experience. And when the Warrens first came on the scene, they borrowed the journal to read it and to see everything that was going on. And they were with the understanding that they would give it back later. And to this day, the parents have never seen that book again. And as it's understood, the parents' case files were sold off, and the journal was sold with it. And I'm sitting here like, but it wasn't the parents. I mean, not the parents. It wasn't the Warrens to be sold. It belongs with the Perrin family.
sounds like a lawsuit that should have been filed.
I definitely should.
I don't know what the statute of limitations is on that now, but
Yeah. Well, unfortunately.
I am not a lawyer, nor do I even pretend to be one on live TV. But I mean, in watching all the things, because like now, the current owners, and I think it was in 2022, if I remember the date correctly, that it sold again, because the woman who was there, so the parents, and then a guy bought it to renovate it. He supposedly ran out without tools and clothes and was like, F this place.
Yeah, I heard that.
After him was like, she was trying to debunk everything. She's like, other than some footsteps and some little orbs, like none of this crazy stuff has happened. Kind of like Amityville, all the families afterwards, nobody had these demonic things happening.
Right.
But she got so annoyed with the attention to the house that she moved. So now it's currently owned by Jennifer Nunes, if I remember her name correctly. And they host hunts. They have, people doing knocking sessions, and they're like, come on in. It's a friendly place. They'll talk to you. So that's why I'm kind of like, I want to go see this house. I want to go see, the land and what's going on. So
Absolutely.
I was watching, I think it's either Sam and Colby or Colby and Sam on YouTube, and they spent a week in the house. And the information that was coming through these knockings about certain family members and nicknames, that they're like, nobody knew grandma went by that name. It's very interesting. And then they'll cut away and they'll be like, we tried like hell to debunk this. For 2 months, we were like, we came up with experiments, we went back. And then you're watching them trying and debunking things. So it seems pretty pretty legit on this one. Like I want to go see this house for myself. Do I
Oh
expect
yeah.
demonic stuff? No.
No, I don't
Um,
think there's any demons in that house.
you know, maybe some earthbounds, maybe some residual replays because of war and things that have happened there. There's a lot of woods and stuff, so there's fey elementals that could be popping in right along too. But I definitely want to go see this house. Right, road trip. Got to see road trip. We're all going to converge in Rhode Island, and we're going to go see this house.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut
Oh,
you off.
no.
Side note, in the store, we just got a new book because I guess it just came out. A customer bought it, and I was like, what is that? Because I'm about to get it. And I did. So it was called The Bones Fall in a Spiral, I think is what it was called. And it was basically like introductory necromantic book. Now, when I say that, there's a lot of weird affiliation with it. It really just means like spirit work in that in the frame that they're talking about. Yeah, road trip. But anyway, it talks about all the different types of spirits. And I think it would be kind of interesting if you guys are like watching into that kind of stuff to pick up a copy if you want to, because I really liked how they explained all of that, and then they explained just like spirit work in general, but they kind of go through like the differences between what an earthbound spirit is, like what makes them an earthbound, like the demonic stuff, elementals, like the fae, like Melissa, you were saying. So just a side note, but I've been reading it, so I wanted to talk about it.
I remember there was only one or two left on the shelf when I was over there pulling that large order. So I'm like, mute, go type in, pull up, go get another one since we're talking about it. Order some more for the store. And it's funny because I got that one with the intention of wanting to, and then like forgot about it until I saw it on the shelf. And I'm like, oh yeah, I should pull that one for book reviewing week. And I'm like, well, now I definitely need to order it because
yeah. It was, I mean, like I said, it seems really cool. It's super comprehensive, and really practical, but like also very respectful of the fact that you are working with the dead and all of that. So super cool book.
I'm like panicking. Ingram's like, we don't have that book. I'm like, yes, you did. Then where did I get it from?
You just had it.
Yeah, somewhere.
I wish I had it in here so I could, but if I open the door, both the cats and the child will be in here, so I'm not going to go grab it. But
yeah, it might be like, Emily, snap me a picture of like the back and the publisher, because like Ingram's like, nope, and I'm like, bullshit. I've gotten it from you before, unless that publisher went. So yeah, I might need that info to go track that down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to get it. We're gonna have to talk about it. Might find it on that review shelf with like mine and Emily's like and in all pretty colors of Post-it notes, like, and this was cool, and this was cool, and this was cool.
Yeah, like I said, super cool book. So.
If you guys have any questions, because I feel like we've been talking longer than the 37 minutes, but it's only 10:37. So whose time been without meaning to?
Yeah.
So Larry, you've been kind of quiet. What's your favorite part of this case? What is this most thing that sticks with you about it?
I think the thing that fascinates me the most is it brings me back to the wartime and how a lot of this stuff is actually attached to the ground and the elements of the land rather than the actual house itself. And I found that on a lot of hauntings, it's not so much the house that's haunted, it's more the grounds, and the house just happens to be in the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Because there are a lot of instances where houses will be, demolished, new ones built, things like that, and the haunting kind of follows, like or it doesn't leave. I guess it doesn't follow, but it never goes anywhere. So I do think, like you said, there's a lot to be said about the land that the house is actually on. And then the other thing too, which I'd be curious to see what you think about this, Larry, actually, is like, you know, just because a spirit doesn't necessarily have to pass away in a place for them to go there or be there after death. At least that's what I've like experienced, is they'll go to the place that, you know, like if they passed away in the hospital, they're not going to haunt the hospital. If they're going to haunt anywhere, they're going to go back to their house or wherever they were at the most and the most comfortable. So I just was curious if you ever experienced that, or if you kind of agree, because I don't know, that's what I tell people. So I'm curious what you think.
No, I agree 100%. A spirit can go anywhere they want to go, and they, there's this thought process that a spirit gets bound to a certain area wherever it dies, and that's not the case. That's a residual. A residual haunting is where that that imprint is in place. But the spirit can go anywhere it wants. It can pop in to visit any of its friends or family. It could go anywhere it wants. It's really limitless. That's one of the beautiful things about the spirit world is they're not held to the confines that we're held to as the human being. We have to physically go somewhere. They just have to. They could be in many places at the same time. I mean, their energy can split, and they can. I mean, it's endless. So I always laugh about the haunted cemeteries because I find the only time I ever see a spirit in a cemetery is either at a funeral when they're just saying goodbye to their loved ones, or if there was a suicide or a murder in the cemetery. I have come across that type of energy, but the cemetery is the place that the carcass goes to decompose. That's not where the spirit energy is.
Yeah, that's what I always say too. Or same, like I said, the hospital. It's like, why are they going to be at a hospital, you know, or a cemetery? Like, especially the cemetery. That's actually, if you are like a sensitive person and seem to not be able to get away from spirits, that's probably the place to go, because nobody
Well,
wants to hang around.
when you talk about the now this is going on a completely different topic, but when you talk about the hospital, when in my hypnosis practice, I had a girl that was she had a back injury and she had to have surgery, and she was very athletic and very health conscious, and I believe she was 19 at the time. And when she came out of surgery and got out of the hospital, she had this overwhelming desire for cigarettes, and she started smoking and smoking like a fiend. And she heard about my hypnosis, and she came to me. And this is one of the things that it was my first case of spirit depossession, because I had realized through the hypnosis process that a spirit had actually passed away in the operating room next to her, who was a very he was a very heavy smoker, and he wasn't ready to leave. And because she was still alive, his energy actually entered her body, and she took on that behavior. And
Wow.
once I was able to release him, she came out of trance, and she threw the cigarettes away, and I saw her like 3 or 4 years later. She had no desire to smoke ever again.
Wow.
So it was just spirit energy can manifest in many different ways. It can actually attach itself to a living, and it can manifest in different ways. It's not a full body possession, and that's what people get confused. They
Mm-hmm.
think just because the spirit comes into you, it's taking over. That's not the case.
It's just
It
the
can,
attachment. Like
it's
you
just,
start taking
yep,
on certain traits of that person.
exactly.
But you're not necessarily possessed completely. Like you hear a lot about you know, like people becoming aggressive and stuff like that when they move into a new home and there's a haunting there. But it's just an attachment. So they're taking on the energy of they don't realize that they're picking up on the energy of the people, of the spirits around them, and then, you know, like you said, like attaching to that. So
Correct. Yeah.
Like,
There's attachments and there's possessions. Two totally different things.
Yeah, sometimes in like hoodoo, like they're referred to as cause spirits. They cause
Mm.
things to happen or people to act a certain way. So we tend to pick those up at like bars and things like that.
Or prisons.
Imagine that,
Bur-
the action and
Bourbon does that.
or bourbon.
Yeah.
Different kind of spirit, Larry.
Yeah.
You get
Or
two.
you
You
pick
get the bourbon and the cause.
yeah, you can pick them up at prisons too.
Well,
I know that personally.
Sabrina, my mind.
I can't help it. Sorry.
So you kind of have to wonder, right? Going back to the house, like again, so we have one family that has all this happen in Lorraine Warren case. What was going on? Now they were teenage daughters. How much of some of that could have been poltergeists? Because how many of them were going near and around puberty? What was the history? What did they do? What did the parents do for work? Were they bringing like earthbounds in with them from their work? Because I think, like Andrea had said, like it seemed to follow them.
Yeah,
So,
she did say that.
Let's not blame the house and the land for what they experienced. Like, what did they bring with them? And this was a case like the one documentary was like, why didn't you leave? Like, why were you staying there? And later on, financial. And it was funny because it was even kind of joking in the documentary. They're like, who has room for 5 teenage girls plus their parents? What friends are going to let that come into their house?
Right.
But it's like, what's the history of the parents? What were their professions? What was their marriage like? What was that home life?
So according to the Andrea's first book, they were completely in love. Her parents, like from what she witnessed, they were always like just like the perfect marriage. We all know that that's not a thing, but they did love each other, and for the most part, they got along. If I'm remembering correctly, through the time leading up to and during this event, the mom was a stay-at-home mom. I forget what the dad did, but I know that she put it in her book because I remember reading it. I just didn't retain what it was. But the home life, for all intents and purposes, according to Andrea, was great. Except for the time in that neighborhood where those kids were just being absolute terrors, and animals were dying left and right and all that. As for the following, or spirits following them, she did say in an interview that after they moved, one of the sisters, I think, had gone back to the house to be like a live-in babysitter for the next family that moved in. And when they were leaving her there, her and her mom had seen a spirit behind her sister and in the window or something like that. And then when they got back to their new house, they looked up and that same spirit was standing on the porch of the new house. And she said that her mom started crying and said, this is never going to end. This is always going to happen. So I'm definitely saying they definitely had attachments of some kind, whether I don't know necessarily if they followed them from the old house, like the first house they lived in before they moved into what we are calling the Conjuring House, because they didn't have any paranormal claims at that home, just the jerks in the neighborhood. And the paranormal stuff didn't start till they moved into that house. That's not saying that something wasn't at the other house. I just think it maybe whatever was happening in that transition kind of woke it up when it got to that property or something, maybe.
It could be that and might be on something like an energy vortex that might help with And
Yeah.
how long were they in that other house? So if they're hitting preteen and teen in the Conjuring House, if they're smaller and littler in that other house, you've got 5 girls running around. That
Well, yeah.
chaos. Are you going to notice knockings and things going missing and things falling over? Or are
Yeah.
you blaming one of the 5 munchkins running around the house? Because they did say in one of the ones that I watched that there was a lot of little things that were happening in the that nobody just talked about. They were just like, eh. So how
Yeah.
much
I mean,
happened at the other house, and you're blaming 5 little girls getting into
yeah.
things.
I mean, if I'm remembering right, the old Andrea, well, I know for a fact Andrea is the oldest of the girls. And if
Mhm.
I'm remembering correctly, she was either 9 or 10 when they moved into the Conjuring House. So there was a lot coming for that family. There was a lot of crazy years coming, for they weren't teenagers yet. So
Puberty.
as soon as as soon as that hits, you got 5 girls all roughly the same age. So when one starts, and then next year another one comes in, and then it just keeps escalating. Every year you get a new one.
Also,
And
the
it's like,
arguing, I'm sure. Like,
oh yeah.
I have a
And
sister.
I just feel bad for the dad at this point. Like,
Oh, he's always out. He can never win, ever.
yeah. I mean, even the dog was female. I mean, come
Oh,
on.
geez.
He's the only guy in the house. Like, bro, no wonder you're working so much. I would too.
I volunteer for overtime. Woo.
Like, because as I understand it, when females live together, it starts to sync up. And if that's the case, then you got 6 women going through this all at the same time. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna go away. I'm gonna move out to, I'm not dealing with the crazy. I only got one to deal with. When she's in heat, she's crazy. But dogs are just like humans. I don't care what anybody says. When they're in heat, they're just as mean.
So, I mean, in my last marriage, like I was the only female. So there were many times where I'm like, girls upstairs, boys downstairs. If you get halfway up that stairwell, I'm going to kill you. Like,
That's fair.
give me an hour to myself, which was in that house that I still technically own. And that house was so solid, like a tornado could go off, and that house was quiet. But yet, let 2 little boys run amok, and that whole house is like, I'm like, how are you shaking cinder block? Children, sit down.
Leave it to kids to figure it out.
That's why I'm like, okay, let's think about this also. Like, what can we kind of debunk in all of the stuff, right?
Yeah.
5 little kids, they're moving in as they're hitting, some of them are starting to hit puberty, because some of us girls, we're blessed to start early in life. Yay. So what's going on? And then 5 little girls, even if a couple of them might be tomboyish, like the hormones are still there, the other ones aren't. You're going to have the drama, then you're going to have the low key. And Emily, I'm sure even the low key, like the drama ones are going to wrap that low key in there because of the drama. So how much of that, again, is kind of like, what did they not even notice could have been happening before coming in? And maybe this house, theory, not fact, don't take my word on this, but if that land has been cultivated to grow produce, right? So it's been nurturing to produce things, to be in a good natural producer instead of knocking all the trees and the plants down and putting more houses. It's going to have this natural energy of producing and magnifying. So maybe all of the stuff they didn't even pay attention to kind of comes on the land and just blows up. Or now it's harder again, to be like, well, where did that go? Those little kids must have ran off, because now they're older and they're less likely, maybe, except for amongst one another, borrowing clothes without asking, borrowing makeup without asking.
Yeah.
But, Larry, you've gone out on some like, have you seen where maybe somebody comes in on an investigation with you? And maybe Emily, because you guys have been more sensitive longer, because Richie, you're growing into yours is the only reason why I'm not including you in this.
No, you're good.
somebody else who you kind of knew ahead of time, like has something that kind of follows even friendly, but then you get them into a certain haunted spot and it just blows up. Like,
Oh yeah, because they're like, oh, people want to talk. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got some equipment out there. You have a sensitive there. Like, I'm gonna start acting up a little bit more. I'm gonna, try and communicate with an audience that can hear me, type of thing. That's what
I
I've
was the
noticed.
person. I
Yeah.
was that person.
Yeah.
Things would not be happening, and then I walked in the room and stuff started happening. They're like, "What did you do?" I'm like, "I walked in the room.
Yeah.
I didn't. What are you talking about?" They're like, "Well, we've been sitting here for an hour and absolutely nothing happened. And as soon as you walked in, our stuff started going haywire."
And a lot of people
Yeah.
with latent abilities, that have not necessarily used them yet, just have that natural energy
Mhm.
in a way around them, and so things just kind of amplify when they're around in general, is my thought,
Yeah,
especially when you're kind of projecting all of that out and you don't really know how to direct it yet, is my thought. I'd like to hear what
Yeah.
Larry has to say, but
Well,
absolutely.
the one thing I'd like to bring up is, if think of it as the telephone. If somebody's on one side of the telephone, everybody everybody kind of thinks that if they pick up the receiver, they're going to hear the exact same thing, and that's not the case. With somebody that's sensitive, it's about energy based. It's about connecting. It's just like going into a bar where you're drawn towards people who have a similar energy.
Hmm.
So I I've done some gallery work with Gregory Nicholas, and he'll pick up on spirits that I'm just barely touching on, but then I'll pick up on other ones that he's not even aware of, because they connect with our energy differently. I'm at one vibrational level, he's at a different vibrational level, and we're able to work together to bring these together.
Yeah,
So when you go into a haunting, one medium in a haunted area is never, in my estimation, a good idea, because you need two or three to bring in different wavelengths, different energy levels, and allow a collaboration for the investigation, not just one
yeah.
person.
I really like that I completely agree with that, especially even like, okay, Grafton School, like
I was getting ready to
most
bring that
people,
up.
yep, picking up on the kid, and I picked up on
Yeah,
the old janitor or
yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah.
it's like funny how different people notice different spirits, and even with clients, um, someone might come through for me. I might be talking with dad when they're surprised because other people are talking with mom or whoever, that passed.
Mhm.
And it is different for each person. So not just like me specifically, but just depends on, how you process information, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said Grafton because I was going to bring that up too. Because the whole time he was saying that, I was thinking about he picked up on the kid, you picked up on the janitor, and then I picked up on whatever that evil thing was in the other room that just wanted to mess us up,
Yeah.
and I didn't like it at all. So I got the nasty, you got the and he got the sad, scared child.
Oh.
well, I mean,
And
Larry, you kind of
yeah,
have that, like, you do have fun. I'm not going to say that you're the boring guy, but you were probably a comforting figure for that little kid.
Mhm.
Because you're a very calm and relaxed type of person. So, out of a room full of people, I could see why that little kid would be like, I'm going to go stand by this big, tall, call guy,
Yeah.
guy over here and just chill out. So,
Yeah,
and it just makes sense for the little kid. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. Um, so, if we had to play any, meeny, miny, mo and match the spirit to the person, I could see that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
let's see. Chris is like, and Chris is another one of our readers. Hey, Chris, joining us in. That is why a good medium will recommend a different one if they cannot connect you for yes. And that is one
yeah,
thing. Like at Goddess Elite, if you're not connecting with somebody, like all of the reader, like I've never had to go yell at a reader for not being like, you know what, this isn't working. Here's your money back. Here's your ticket back. And then they always come to me, which this has only happened like a handful of times over the course of the years, that they're like, look, I'm not connecting with Susie Joe. Here's her ticket back, you know, help her find who she needs to be with. So that is the integrity that I want in the readers, and then, you know, for the store. So it's not about money. Hell, if anything, we will kind of cut you off if like, no, you don't need a reading every week.
Yep.
Like, we're not going to keep taking your money from you week after week.
Yeah.
You need to let this percolate and settle and live life and let these things, you know, go through instead of coming in every week for an answer on, you know,
on the same situation, you know.
Yeah. So, you know, so, we're almost at 11. So we haven't really decided yet what we're going to talk about next week. So if you have suggestions, feel free to drop them in. People do get addicted to readings. They actually absolutely do. And knowing, you know, and knowing that like we all are in a space of like, yes, we want to help and help you heal. And that being said, we are not going to take money from you, knowing that you're coming from a place of, you know, this is an unhealthy habit that you're starting to do by coming in and constantly wanting a reading for every little step you make.
Right.
Honey, you, and it's that like, how do you politely say, go to therapy?
Yeah. It is
you need help outside of our walls here.
Yeah. Like sometimes you do have to say, you know, like I've had to do it where it's like, you know, I'm not, the stuff that you're bringing up is not the kind of thing that I'm supposed to be helping you with type of thing, you know? But sometimes, you know, people just want someone to listen to them, which, you know, that's valid, but just like you said, there's got to be boundaries put in place. So
stress and trauma, because, you know, in a way we were kind of like that certified like therapist sometimes, right? And so you know that, and coming from that place of like what is in their best interest, and constantly coming in and, you know, I'm like, no, okay, we've seen you in here and I see your name, like you're not even out of the building and you've booked again for like another week. And it's like, no. no. So Crybaby is actually Bad Hippie Sean. He had to change his name. So thank you for coming with us every week. And he's like, I used to get tarot drunk, but I would give myself those readings. It's a slip. We should bring Sean on one time. He does tarot. He's designing a tarot deck that I can't wait for it to be in Kickstarter so I can order one.
Oh, how cool.
Chair Bear says she needs a reading. When are we doing readings next? You know what? We might have to plan that on a special evening at some point. Right now, everybody's schedules have been so hectic.
Yeah.
Although Larry and Emily both do offer Zoom, so that is an option. Oh, yay! Okay, so, and since I threw you under the bus, so he's like, "I'd love to do that." So, but yeah, if you guys have suggestions on the next case, even if it's not super big, as long as we can find some info on it and understand like what was going on, like we're all for it. I like all spooky things. I'm that half skeptic, half believer going in there. I'm not going to believe everything I read and see. I'm going to devil's advocate both spots, and I think we all have a good, healthy skepticism.
Yeah, agree.
And maybe one of these times we're going to actually have to go have a hunt somewhere. And I think there's been a couple things that I've heard whisperings about in the store where we might want to go. Local.
No, I ain't got something in the work.
So, but now I really want road trip to Rhode Island. Like I want to go to this.
I do.
So I was watching, it's either Colby and Sam or Sam and Colby YouTube, free to watch. They have multi-part pieces of this house. And what were you watching, Emily? You said it before, but I forgot.
It was called The Harrisville Haunting, I think it was called. It was on Tubi, they had it. But so 4 investigators go in. That was a good one. I know Mackie and Amanda go to the Conjuring House. But I think they go with Sam and Colby one time too. So they're like another hunt. I don't know when it became like a thing where it was like blah 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 and blah blah blah. Like those are all the ghost hunters for some reason. I don't know, but so there's Sam and Colby, and then there's Maggie and Amanda. And Amanda is actually a medium, so she will do the investigations. And I think she joined Sam and Colby one time at the Conjuring House. So, but there's quite a few investigations that have been done there. It's like in the 2 years it's been open. It's been open season. So
well, the new owner, she's a spiritualist. So that's why I think it's so easy now to get to it, because she's like, there is life after death. Look at this house.
Right.
Now, Larry, do you have any good reference for people to go watch or read? I know Richie does. Richie usually probably has like the textbook sitting next to him to like reference from. But Larry, what might you have?
As far as this particular story, or
Yeah.
I was looking. All my research came off of YouTube, and there's several documentaries about the debunking and the story of the house. So that's where I got my information from.
Yeah,
I
there's
like YouTube.
I like that you can find both sides of every story on YouTube. So
Yeah.
you can I feel like you get a better idea. You know, what do they say? There's your side, my side, and then like what actually happened.
Yes.
And I
Right.
think YouTube helps you get better. Now, Richie, what is your thick textbook list of reference for for this
For
Conjuring House?
this one, the only references that I will ever endorse or talk about is the 3-part or the 3 books of get it together, 3 volumes of House of Darkness, House of Light, or it's either House of Darkness, House of Light, or House of Light, House of Darkness. But either way, it was written, all 3 of them were written by Andrea Perrin. And it is literally just her writing exactly what they went through. She had her sisters and her parents, come in and tell her what they went through, because they could all, 2 people can be in the same room and experience totally different things at the exact same time.
Mm-hmm.
So they all did have different experiences. There were some shared experiences, but they all had different ones as well. So she kind of collected her whole family's memories of their time in that house and all of the crap that happened to their family. And she wrote 3 volumes, and that is the only source material that I will use, because for me, especially now, knowing her personally, having met her, and I've seen her the last 2 years at Parapsychon. I've sat and talked with her. I don't want to hear what anybody else has to say. I want to use what she says, because in my opinion, if you didn't go through it yourself, then you're not going to have everything right at all. So House of Darkness, House of Light, I believe is what it's called, and it's 3 volumes written by her. She's making it also into a TV series. They're going to do, I don't know if they're going to do it as like a docu-series, or if they're going to do it more of like a TV show, like where I know they're hiring actors, but you have to do that for flashbacks anyway. But I don't know how they're going to go about it. They don't even know where they're going to put it yet. But she is working on getting a series put out. So I'm excited for that, because I fall asleep when I'm reading. Like every time I'm reading anything, I fall asleep. So I'm like, can I just watch it? Like all the books that I know, I have listened to on Audible, but sadly there's not an audio version of any of those books yet. And I don't think there will be. But I did try to start reading one of them this weekend again, and I got part of the way through it. And I realized I'm sitting at work, I'm exhausted, my eyes are falling. And I'm like, no, I can't finish reading this. And I meant to bring it home and work on it, and then I left the book in the office, and I'm just like, whatever. I'm not walking all the way back down there to get that.
So I'm looking at the Paraslycon special guest, and I'm like, yay, Mike Ricksecker. He's local, very nice guy. And we've done his book, A Walk in the Shadows, with Mary Ann's book club, so he'll be there. And the two people from the Conjuring House who do kind of like the tapping sessions are actually going to be there this year, because I was looking to see if Andrea's listed. And
I don't think she is.
But I saw that. So if you go and watch Sam and Colby, I don't know. I haven't watched the ones, Emily, the Mandy and
Mackie and Amanda. Yeah.
I haven't watched them, but I know in Sam and Colby, like those are the two people that are doing these sessions, and they hold like forearms, and they are trying to debunk them. And so, like I said, they're dragging them out of the house, out to random locations, buying them new shoes to try and like debunk this. But those two people will
Come
be
say hi
right now.
Come say hi.
Mansfield. So if you're local, or even if you're not, and you want to make the trip, it is a very fun event. We love going. But it is May 17th through 19th this year, and you can meet a whole bunch of paranormal celebrities. But if you watch those and you want to meet those two people, they will be.
You gotta go.
Luna's getting a little fan club.
You got your own fan base. More people like you than likes me.
So, Larry, do you have a pet? I know the three of us all have a pet. Do you have a pet?
I've got 2 dogs, 4 cats, and like 9 fish.
Well, okay, Mr. One-Upper. Okay, Mr. One-Upper.
And do you throw frozen lemons at young children and tell them to get off your grass?
No. Actually, I encourage them to come over and play with the dogs because I get tired.
So you're throwing this ball for me. I'll tire my pups out.
Here, just play with them. I'm sure the pups love it.
So
yeah, we love our animals.
Yeah, mine's too busy sleeping on the couch. He's like, whatever.
I wish mine would go to sleep.
And Emily, you already warned us that, if you open the door, at least Hilda, right, will probably come in and say,
yeah, she's been slamming herself against I keep muting myself because she's been knocking on the door.
Mom!
Yeah. She's so mad that I locked her out.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll be back next week with yet another case to talk about. Don't know if we'll rope Larry in again. We'll try. We'll see. But hopefully you can join us next Wednesday at 10 a.m. And if you have suggestions, if there's a paranormal case that you would like us to kind of go deeper in there for you, that you're interested and you just don't have time to find out, shoot us a message, comment, email, something, whatever platform you're on, and we'll take a look. But thanks for joining us, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.